This week on Hometown Ghost Stories, a unique ghostly phenomenon has been happening off the coast of Delaware since the mid-1600s. Corpse lights have been luring ships to their doom and turning the ships and crews themselves into ghostly figures haunting the shores. But what causes these deadly lights to exist? Many believe it's the work of a curse. Join us as we discuss the corpse lights of Lewes, Delaware.
Dark waves whisper low, dead lights eerie glow, luring sailors below, where the lost spirits go. Haunted coasts they roam, never find their home, souls forever alone in the deadlight zone.
Hometown Ghost Stories contains serious and often distressing events and is not intended for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Captain William Keefe's log. Date, June 15th, 1723. Today marked the beginning of our voyage across the Atlantic, bound for the promising shores of the American colonies. The crew, a mix of seasoned sailors and eager adventurers, set sail with hearts full of hope and excitement. The wind filled our sails, propelling us forward into the vast unknown. Spirits were high as we left the familiar shores of England behind, dreaming of the opportunities awaiting us across the sea. August 1st, 1723. Captain William Keefe's log. Restlessness stirs among the crew as our journey stretches into its 6th week. The initial excitement has waned, replaced by murmurs of discontent fueled by dwindling supplies and the monotony of endless sea. Rations grow sparse and the promise of fresh water becomes a distant memory. Nightly sightings of a ghost ship on the horizon only add to the growing unease. Some whisper there is an ill omen, a spectre sent to warn us away from our intended path. I remain steadfast, urging the men to hold fast to their duties as we navigate these treacherous waters. August 17, 1723. Captain William Keefe's log. Tonight, the mysterious ship returned with an eerie persistence. As if guided by some unseen force, it sails purposefully toward a distant glowing light on the horizon, a light that seems to beckon it onward. Our own course veers away instinctively, the crew whispering of curses and haunted waters. I ordered extra lookouts, yet none could explain the nature of this ghostly vessel. Fear now grips the men more tightly than the rigging. I shall consult the charts and trust in our navigational skills to avoid whatever doom may await ahead.
September 1st, 1723. Captain William Keefe's log. Disaster has struck. The cursed light led us astray, and despite our efforts to steer clear, jagged rocks tore through the hull with a merciless fury. I sustained injuries during the chaos. A deep gash across my leg that bleeds relentlessly. The ship is wrecked, shattered like a porcelain teacup upon the unforgiving shore. Most of the crew perished in the tumultuous waters. A desperate cry swallowed by the tempest. The ghostly ship hauntingly observing from afar. Its presence mocks our hubris, a silent witness to our demise. Soon, I too shall join my men in the deep. May this journal bear witness to our tragic end, a cautionary tale of the perils that await those who dare tempt fate upon these haunted seas.
September 5th, 1723. Captain William Keefe's log. Alone now. I am the last survivor of the ill-fated voyage. The days blur together in a haze of grief and solitude. The wreckage of our once proud ship lies strewn across the rocky shore, a grim reminder of our futile struggle against the sea's wrath. My injured leg throbs with pain, a constant reminder of the price we paid for chasing dreams across these treacherous waters. Each night brings more sightings of ghostly shadows watching from the rocks, their forms shifting and fading with the mist. They seem to whisper secrets carried on the wind, a chorus of lost souls condemned to haunt these shores. I have salvaged what provisions I could, but they are meagre and will not sustain me for long. The wind howls mournfully through the shattered timbers, and I am left to ponder the events that have led us here. Was it folly to chase after dreams across these treacherous waters? Or were we mere pawns in a larger, crueler game played out by forces beyond our comprehension? The answers elude me, lost in the depths alongside my fallen comrades. I pen these final words with a heavy heart, knowing that my time draws near. The ghostly ship still watches from a distance, its silent vigil a testament to the sea's unforgiving nature. Let this journal serve as a solemn warning to any who may follow. Beware the seductive lights that dance upon these waters, for they lead only to despair and death. May my story guide others away from the same tragic fate that befell us.
I'm Tom Strachan, and this is Hometown Ghost Stories, Lewes, Delaware.
Lewes is the site of the first European settlement in Delaware, which was a whaling and trading post that the Dutch founded on June 3, 1631. The colony itself would have a very short existence, as a local tribe of Lenape Native Americans killed all 32 settlers in 1632. The Dutch wouldn't try settling the area again until 1663, and shortly after, in 1664, the English would capture it and demand the colony be razed, with orders of not even a single nail being left behind. As the town grew throughout the years after this, it would be no stranger to war, and the War of 1812 was no exception. On April 6th and 7th, the town would be bombarded, and a very particular house still holds an artifact from that battle. The house, built at 118 Front Street around 1765, would become known forever as the Cannonball House, as during this battle, one would lodge into the house and is still there to this day. In March of 1917, the house would see another tragedy. Susan Rowland was 90 years old and living in the house by herself. While doing mundane chores, stove polish would explode in the house and burn her entire body. She would succumb to the wound shortly after. Although many believe Susan is haunting the property, it is believed that more than one person now haunt the former home. The house itself is now a museum, and multiple paranormal experiences have been reported by staff and guests. While conducting renovations in the house during the 1960s, handyman Fred Hudson would leave his tools neatly arranged before going home for the evening. When he would return the next day, the tools would always be thrown about the room they were left in, and this room was the room that Susan's accident happened. Finally, getting fed up thinking someone was messing with him, Fred nailed the door shut and locked the house up so that no one could get in. The next day, after unlocking the house, he walked to the room with his tools, and as he approached, he saw a nail on the ground and the door wide open. When he entered the room, he saw that his tools had been scattered about yet again. There have been many other reports regarding that room, stating that the door often opens on its own. A more recent story was of a river captain who came to visit the house. He wandered upstairs on his own, and a few minutes later came barging down and heading towards the door to leave, his face completely pale. When one of the museum workers asked him what was wrong and if he was okay, he replied, quote, "I just have to get out of this house. There's something up there," end quote, before leaving and never returning. Items in the house have gone missing, only to be found in places that don't make sense as to why they would be there. One such instance was that of a key that belonged to a 16th century Spanish chest. Workers within the house noticed the key missing and believed it had fallen into the chest while locked. Shortly after, as a member of the staff was walking through the house, he saw a coiled up rope that he and no one else had ever seen before on the floor. After picking up the rope, the key was spotted hiding underneath it, and the entire staff was puzzled. Many visitors and staff have also reported hearing footsteps following them throughout the house, as well as intense cold spots through different rooms. Stretching from the town of Lewes up against the shores of the Atlantic Ocean is Cape Henlopen State Park. One of the earliest pieces of land to be declared public use in what would become the United States, it didn't officially become a state park until 1964. Although usually a place for leisure, this area has had its involvement in most wars fought by the US, including the Revolutionary, the War of 1812, World War I, and especially World War II. In 1941, the Army would establish Fort Miles in the area. The reason for this was that Germany had marked the Delaware Valley as one of their prime targets because of the ships and trains that passed through, as well as the items manufactured there, such as ammunition and clothing. Along with using natural features from the coastline, the Army also raised dunes to hide weapon embankments. The Army would also go on to construct observation towers and bunkers. Some of these structures still remain today and are used for fire control and recreational observation. Many believe, however, that a soldier is still guarding one of these towers in the afterlife. Tower 12 is located near the Great Dune, campgrounds, and a bike path within the park. People visiting the area between the tower and a bunker have felt a menacing presence amongst them. Some, upon getting close to Tower 12 or the bunker, have heard a man begin to growl at them, although no one else is there. Others have taken pictures in the area and have claimed the face of a soldier has shown up in those photos. There are even stories of his apparition showing up at the nearby campground at night, and has been the known reason for people fleeing the site. The most terrifying ghost of the area, however, may be lingering on the shoreline and ocean itself, and a legend involving a curse is at the center of them. In the spring of 1655, the Lenape Native American tribe were in the middle of a wedding ceremony. They had recently reached a truce with white settlers that had been showing up on their land, and worries about anything negative happening were low. However, a group of English men would appear out of the tree line and massacre the majority of the wedding party, leaving very few survivors. The natives were enraged, and after consulting with a shaman, he placed a death curse on all the European men that would come over on their ships. That curse would begin to come true just a few short months later. At the beginning of winter, sailors began reporting lights coming from the shore. Many believed it was from some sort of lighthouse. However, at the time, no lighthouse had been constructed. Tragedy would strike just weeks later, on Christmas Day, 1655. A ship called the Devonshireman was traveling towards Delaware. Caught in a terrible storm, the captain and crew were desperate to try to get the boat to shore. Suddenly, a light was spotted, and the crew believed it to be a lighthouse. The crew began to follow the lights, and only discovered there was in fact no lighthouse at all, just moments before doom. The light had led the boat to an area of rocks, and the boat would slam violently into them. The wreck would take over 200 lives that day, and would be only the first of many shipwrecks in the area, with many others claiming to see the corpse light before crashing. Eventually, a lighthouse would be constructed in 1765 after numerous shipwrecks. The lighthouse itself would be damaged during the American Revolution by the British, and although repaired, it had a bigger concern. The structure was built upon a sand dune near the ocean that was constantly changing due to water and weather. On April 13, 1926, the lighthouse would fall into the ocean. Although there was a lighthouse, reports of the corpse lights from ships still persisted, causing confusion and wrecks. Another one of the more famous shipwrecks in the area was that of the HMS De Brock, British warship that sunk on May 25, 1798. The sloop was caught by surprise with a storm and looked to the lights for guidance, yet ended up wrecking and capsizing rapidly. 47 crew members and several Spanish prisoners would lose their lives. The wreckage was discovered in 1984, and artifacts associated with the ship that are now at a museum in Lewes are believed to be haunted. Since housing the recovered items, staff members at the museum have reported an eerie feeling around the artifacts. When near the sailors' personal items such as clothing and other trinkets, guests and staff have reported feeling somber and felt like they're being watched. During an event, visitors were complaining of sudden cold spots and being touched by what multiple people could only describe as invisible hands. The Dubrock, the Devonshiremen, and many other ships may still be sailing near the coastline as ghost ships themselves. Reports dating back to the 1700s have stated seeing ghost ships circling the Delaware shoreline. Witnesses describe these ships as having tattered sails and glowing lanterns that are from a different century. Adding to the terror, people have heard the faint sound of ghostly cries before the ships vanish without a trace, leaving an unsettling silence behind. Alongside the sightings of ghost ships, people have also reported seeing shadowy figures on the shoreline of Cape Henlopen. These dark silhouettes, often described as human-like, appear and disappear mysteriously. Witnesses claim these shadow figures sometimes move along the beach or stand motionless, watching from a distance. These shadowy entities are also reported to vanish abruptly, sometimes fading into the fog or disappearing behind dunes and rocks. The mysterious corpse lights of Cape Henlopen continue to be seen by locals and visitors. These eerie, flickering lights are often spotted near the shoreline, resembling lanterns from ships or from the ocean, a lighthouse, as stated earlier. It is said that the lights move unpredictably and disappear just as suddenly, leaving an unsettling feeling behind. The persistent sightings of these corpse lights help lend credibility to the ghostly hauntings and tragedies experienced for almost 400 years in the area, especially since these corpse lights were both seen before and after the lighthouse that was operating fell. These facts may just prove that the curse placed so long ago may never be lifted, and those that have lost their lives to the lights may be cursed to roam and sail the coastline for eternity.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into Hometown Ghost Stories, episode number 127, The Corpse Lights of Delaware in Lewes, Delaware. I'm Jesse Wilkins. I'm joined by Rob Coakley. Hello, Rob.
You want to know how dedicated I am to this show? I reached out to my friend from England during the week of the 4th of July and had the balls to ask him to do a voiceover for us. So thank you to Tom Strachan from, he has his own fantasy football channel called The Fantasy Sanctuary. He did that opening ghost story because I thought a British captain should have a British accent, a proper one for that opening story. So thanks again, Tom, for doing that for us.
What do you mean by a proper one? Like, I don't have a proper one. You could have asked me. We're also joined by Dave Wilkins as well. Hello, Dave.
Hello.
Look at that. See? That's his Tennessee
Another
accent. You could have had that.
Yeah, well, I should have just done that.
Absolutely. So this is episode 127, covering Delaware, I believe, for the first time, right?
Yeah, this is our first Delaware episode, which leaves one state left that we have not covered, which is Wisconsin, which
right.
Really?
T-Pain once rhymed with mansion. So that is a thing.
Wisconsin.
Yep. Still impressed by that.
That's kind of how they pronounce it out there, isn't it, though? Wisconsin.
That's true. It is how they pronounce it out there.
Oh, we got to get somebody with one of those Midwestern accents or the whatever accent that is to do the ghost story. There was a ghost named Bob. Love it. So here we are in Delaware. I want to thank everyone who's hanging out in live chat. We got some gifted memberships coming in. Some guy, Rob, donated 20. Then the Potato guys came in, gifted a total of 20. And Papa Scotch Gifted 20, who is tonight's RIP, really important person. He is alive and well. And for everybody in live chat, we have a very, very special treat dedicated to Papa Squatch that we'll play after the show. So stick around for that. I'm excited for that. We do have a couple live events that we touched on last week. They are coming up. Tickets are on sale. We'll start dropping the links for those in the show notes. I believe we shared them on Discord, but we will send more info for those. With more on that, let's go to our senior correspondent, Rob, on all live events.
Yeah, so we are going to be doing our live show in Weymouth, Massachusetts on Friday, October 18th, I believe it is. God, I hope that's what it is. But it's Friday, October 18th.
Our former senior live event correspondent, Rob, has been fired. On to Dave.
I have all the info for the other event in front of me.
Well, let's talk about that.
So, but first, if you want to go to that event, $25 to get into there. It's going to be us. There's going to be other podcasters, going to be vendors. It's going to be a blast. Weymouth, Massachusetts, Friday, October 18th. $25 gets you in the door. It's at a brewery. You're going to be able to drink. And if you want to investigate with us, if you want to come and do an investigation with Jesse, Dave, and myself, we will bring all of our fancy tools and equipment for the investigation. We're going to be doing an investigation the weekend of October 25th and 26th on Block Island, which is in Rhode Island. And this is a very limited ticket event. Basically, you're going to be booking a room as well as the investigation. That room, the Friday, we're going to be doing dinner together. We're going to do a ghost tour. Then we're going to do the actual investigation on Saturday. We're going to do a breakfast. And then there's another investigation Saturday night at a different location. You can reach Holly at 401-466-5891. There's only 11 rooms to book for this. Yeah, so if you want to do this, you have to get on it.
Kind of, but there's other options as well. So you can actually, if those rooms get booked up and you want to get an Airbnb or a different hotel or whatever, you can do that and still get tickets to the event.
We're not 100% sure that's how that's going to go. We're at the moment we're limiting to the 11 rooms that get booked.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that was in the email, but we'll discuss that and get the details knocked down. So I'm going to believe senior correspondent of live events, Robert, on this one, and that's how we'll play it for now. But the info is out there. We will continue to share it. But I'm looking forward to it. Spooky season is upon us. I know it's hot, it's summer, it's beautiful outside, but we declared that spooky season has started, and we always say it here: we make the rules.
That's right.
So that's right. That is the plan. Yeah, let's hop into it. What do you say?
Yeah, let's start talking about Lewes, Delaware. Started digging into different locations in Delaware. There was one that I wanted to cover, but believe it or not, I was being nice and I left it for Dave because I think he can do a part of his Civil War Ghosts series that he started 3 years ago that he dips his toes into. Mm-hmm. And I started looking at other places, and Lewes popped up, and the corpse lights really caught my attention when I was researching this. And we've talked about ghost ships, and almost every ghost ship we've talked about has some sort of pirate ties. And this one doesn't have any. It's legitimately just these corpse lights that are tied to a curse from the Native Americans of the land. And the amount of ships that wrecked in this area of Delaware is insane.
It is.
It's crazy. You start looking at the numbers and it's much higher. And I wonder if it has something to do. There's like an inlet between New Jersey and Delaware, and it might be really hard to navigate that. So maybe that also helps raise. But these lights have been seen since the 1600s for sure, documented. And they might even be older than that. But there's been documentation since the winter of 1665, I believe it was. With the Devonshiremen, right?
Yeah. And the only reason you might not have heard of it before then is newspapers didn't really start printing until around that time. So that's probably why you're getting your first is late 1600s, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know. But so there was no real like sharing of public knowledge before that. But this dates back super far, and they don't really have a scientific explanation for it. They do say it could be some sort of lights that form in the atmosphere. There's atmospheric explanations, but the fact that it would keep happening in the same spot over time and time again you actually saw this. We were just talking about Block Island. We saw something like this on Block Island, but that was literally they would lure people in with a lantern. They'd put it on a donkey, have them spin around so it makes it look like it's a lighthouse, and they would lure ships in to crash so they can loot the ships and do that kind of piracy. But this is something different. This is something that, like you mentioned, it could tie back to a curse.
Yeah, from the wedding ceremony that happened where just there was a truce reached. I mean, there's a lot of history on this land between a lot of massacres on both sides, but it starts with the wedding and the English coming over and just massacring this entire wedding party or most of the wedding party. And
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Again, thank you, Tom, for joining us and being on this episode as we talk about the terrible things that England did.
Not exactly how you want to spend your wedding. That's just awful.
Dead? Yeah, you usually don't want to.
That's just not how you planned it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that some people do plan it that way. I've seen some true crime shows that Walder Frey, that's a good one. Yep.
Maybe for those of you who haven't watched Game of Thrones yet.
Wow,
we never know.
Yeah, I think there was like a woman who threw her husband off a mountaintop at one point, right when they were getting married. So
in the same place, or that's a different wedding?
This was a different way. This is like recent. This is a couple years ago. But I'm just saying, in general, you don't really go to your wedding expecting to die, right? And that's kind of unfortunately what happened to most of the people at this wedding. And then this shaman places this curse on the ships that come in. They call them long canoes, is what I believe that the Native Americans refer to their ships as, was long canoes. And he put this curse on the boats, and a couple months later, the Devonshireman's the first one that actually crashes following the lights, trying to follow the lights to safety. So it's a crazy story. It says that there was over 200 people on the Devonshireman.
I was about to say, I think the number was at around 200.
Which I'm having a hard time believing, because I started looking up merchant ships and stuff from the time frame, and it said that it used to carry, like, those ships carried 40 to 50 people on average. But I don't know exactly what type of ship it was. Again, we're talking about the mid 1600s, so info isn't the easiest thing to.
Right. It wouldn't be uncommon for that to have a couple hundred on them.
Right.
Yeah, 40 or 50 would be a pretty small ship if that was max capacity.
Yeah, so it depends on what kind of ship it was then, I guess. And I thought they said it was a merchant ship, so I was looking at the merchant ships from the time. But if it was like a passenger ship, then we're talking more people, right?
Right.
And merchant ships, naval ship. I mean, there was a ton of these ships would have upwards of 300 people on them. Like you needed a big crew to sail those ships.
Depends on but again, it depends on the ship. And if you look at the typical merchant ship from the 1600s, it's going to tell you that 40 to 50 people were usually on that one. So I think we're arguing semantics almost a little bit here with that, because 50 to 200 is still a large number of people that we're losing. And then it just continues from that point on. But people attribute the ghost ship to the Devonshireman and the Dubrock. Those are the two ships that people attribute seeing these ghost ships to. And my question is, why those two? I think it's because they're the most known when there's hundreds of ships that sank. So I don't think it could just be those two. I think we might be seeing multiple different ships here that are actually ghost ships in the area. If you're seeing stuff, I don't think it's just those two, as a lot of the stories tell you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, with so many ships that wrecked there, it could be any one of them. It's hard to say. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a ship that actually wrecked there. You just kind of assume it is because that's what happened. But it could be any number of them. It was a treacherous area. And not only that, with this whole strange light, they believe that's the cause for most, if not all, of these wrecks.
The cause of the wrecks are the shoals, and the channels are always changing, making it very difficult to navigate.
Right, but if they're getting lured in from this light, thinking that they're going to a safe harbor, then it's a combination of both, right?
Yeah, and that's what a lot of them thought. They didn't even know there wasn't a lighthouse, because information is so sparse back then, right? So they're just looking for a sign for anything to help them. So you see a light, you're like, oh my God, light, got to follow that, right? That's got to lead us to safety. Light must mean shore or where we're supposed to go. And a lot of times it proved to be quite deadly. And it says that like these shores, the rocks on these shores were just ripping these boats to shreds.
Yeah, very similar to Cape Cod. Cape Cod was notoriously treacherous for people to sail around. It's in Massachusetts for people that aren't from the area, and the pirates of the time would avoid Cape Cod because it was just, unless you knew how to sail around that area, you avoided it, and that's why there's so many shipwrecks out there. Crazy Legs coming in, gifting 20 Hometown Ghost Stories memberships. Thank you so much, Crazy Legs. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So it sucks for the people that were on the boats that you're looking for that literal glimmer of hope, and you see this light and you think it's your savior, and it's actually your downfall, right? Like just because you're grasping at anything when you're in this terrible weather. And they said that, you know, all weather on the ocean just changes on a dime. Like it just, sometimes storms just come out of nowhere. So you're in an area that you don't know either. It's not a route that people have commonly traveled at this point in time. I mean, a little more in the 1700s, but still it's just, you're not throwing your ship GPS in and being like, all right, well, we're going to go here. We're going to take a left. We're going to grab the jet ski at the tip of the base and sail across the ocean, right? Like you're not doing that whole situation. You're
not like everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just becomes this whole terrible thing. And then you start seeing not just the ghost ships, but the shadow figures on the beach line, and almost like taunting you after you crash, which you got a few reports of, that they would just see these shadow figures almost watching from the rocks or from the shoreline as they sank.
Yeah, it's creepy. Not to bring up the same point that I just brought up a little while ago, but it does make me think again of Block Island. Could it be that in some of these cases it wasn't ghosts on the island? Could it be that these shadow figures and the light was somebody luring them in to crash and then loot the ship?
I don't think so, just because of the movement patterns they talk about with the light, where they said that it wasn't like a circle, like because the one on Block Island looked like a circle, right? Like it looked like a lighthouse because of what they were doing with the torch and stuff. They said that these were like little, when you got closer, they became these little balls of light that moved swiftly over the top of the water. By the time that you were crashing, like this is what you finally saw what they look like, and you go, oh shit, at that point. So I don't think it is. I don't think it was people trying to lure them, because where they were crashing, the boats weren't even salvageable either.
Right.
Like they weren't able to get to the stuff. That the Brock didn't get found until 1984. And when they found it, everything was still on the ship.
Wow.
Well, I mean, like everything that was still.
Yeah, I would assume in that scenario with this coastline, if you were luring ships to crash, you'd be really just banking on the stuff coming, like the stuff washing up ashore. I don't think you're sailing a boat out there and collecting stuff. Maybe whatever floats. Who knows? Who knows? This is just a theory.
That would be a big hope to kill 40 to 200 people every single time. For like, man, I just hope like a bottle of rum washes on shore as I take out these 200 people. So
that's all I hope for.
I don't think that's what was going on personally. I think that whether it be supernatural or something in the atmosphere, I do think these lights were appearing, and I do think that the ships were following to their doom. Even when the lighthouse was there, they would still the lights would still trick the boats, because they finally put a lighthouse in. And we need to talk about where they constructed this lighthouse, because what are we doing? I understand it's the 1700s and, you know, resources aren't what they were. They built it on a giant dune, like a giant sand dune. Dave, would you build a house on a sand dune?
I would not recommend building houses on sand dunes.
I mean, it lasted for over 100 years until it finally toppled over into the ocean.
Which is impressive that it lasted that long.
I am also impressed that it lasted that long. But there, you saw the pictures of it. It was like the early 1920s where it finally like toppled over. This thing was getting beat on, because this was a very focus point during wars too. like naval battles are happening here. We're going to talk about the Cannonball House in a second as well. But it was just like these focused battles. The lighthouse was constantly getting hit with gunfire, cannonballs, and all that stuff. So the fact that it lasted over 100 years is crazy. But yeah, they did finally build the lighthouse, and then it fell, and they didn't build another one in the area.
It's sand dune. I mean, they probably learned by the time the thing finally fell over. Even if they hadn't realized it by that point, then they realized it. Like, oh, it fell over. Oh, we shouldn't build another one here.
Sand moves.
What was the name of the beach?
I think it's
not Breakwater, is it? Because there is a lighthouse at Breakwater now.
No, it's not Breakwater. It's Cape Henlopen is where this is. So there's no lighthouse there anymore, not in that area. But there is the watchtowers, and we can start talking about the watchtowers a little bit.
That's just one before we move off that, right?
Sure.
Just one point. So you put lighthouses in problem areas where ships are crashing. So we know that lots of ships crashed. They're probably like, we shouldn't build on a sand dune, but we got to stop the ships from crashing here. So we build it. If it falls, it falls, but we got to at least try. So maybe that's what it was. And then it lasted 100 years. So
did the house collapse into the sea too? Because I know they had a house right next to it.
From the picture that I saw, the house was still standing after the lighthouse collapsed. It's in the episode. It was really tough to see the house, but the house was still there. I'm sure they tore the house down at this point.
Yeah, I have a picture of it now. I'll share my screen because this thing looks like it's about to go.
Oh, is it still there?
Well, no, that's clearly an old picture, but
yeah.
If it didn't collapse yet, it was about to.
Yeah.
So, for audio listeners, the house is about, I would say, at least 20 to 30% off the cliff already. It's just, yeah, this was
like as the ground eroded from under it, they kind of just braced it with, because that looks like it was added after the fact. Because there's no way that's the initial spot where they stuck it.
Yeah, you don't build a house halfway off a cliff.
Yeah. Crazy.
Nothing wrong. Nothing could go wrong here. Yeah.
You don't want to have to play a game of seesaw with your house.
No. Don't go in the dining room unless somebody else is in the living room.
Yeah, we gotta balance it out, folks.
Han, we gotta put the fridge on the other side of the house. Put it in the bathtub.
I need to take a shower. Please go stand in the kitchen.
You have to load all your food into one side of the fridge. Right, moving on.
Yeah, unreal. So that's the corpse lights. Like that, some people think they're like Will o' the Wisps, which we're gonna talk about in History of Ghost at some point when we do those again. We'll talk about the Will o' the Wisps because there's a pretty cool story that goes along with those. But yeah, it's
this comment from Papa Squatch is great. He says, if your house can be destroyed by one guy with a shovel, probably not a good idea.
Yeah. But did you see the view?
Yeah. How can you not? Yeah.
So let's talk about the tower on Cape Henlopen, which was built in 1942, I believe it was. They started building the towers for World War II. They were worried about the Germans coming over. They thought it was going to be a high probability of being attacked in this area because of the ship line, because of the ships that came in, because of the railroad tracks, because of the manufacturing that happened here. Again, other wars focused on this area as well. And they built an entire fort around it, and they put up these observation/gun towers, and they still stand today. And Tower 12, very specifically Tower 12, none of the other ones, is believed to be haunted by a soldier. And no one says what war, but I would have to believe World War II, because why would one of the guys from the War of 1812 just move in and be attracted to key points from the fort that was built in the 1940s, right? So there's no information on who anyone thinks it is. Everything is very limited. There's supposedly pictures that he's shown up in. Couldn't find any of those. But people have heard a man growl at them, which never want to hear a man growl at you.
Especially if there isn't a man there.
Yeah, especially if there isn't a man there.
That is concerning, and I wonder what makes him think that it's specifically the sound of a man growling and not an animal.
I
feel like you could tell the difference between a man growling and an animal growling.
Dave,
Right.
you want to growl for us real quick?
I was literally about to ask you to do that, Rob. let's all do a quick growl and see which one sounds most like a ghost.
You ready? Jesse, you going first?
Raw. Oh, dude, that was scary.
Oh,
Pretty
wow.
bad. Pretty good, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have put a disclaimer on how scared. I could have made the whole chat right there.
It
We'll move
sounded
on.
very much like the lion from Wizard of Oz in that in that growl. So if you ever need to audition for something, that is the role that you should go for.
Oh yeah, I got it locked up. Got it locked up. It's a strange haunting because obviously the Germans didn't make it to Delaware, and
Good thing.
he could have died in the tower, but we don't know who it is. I would assume that being in the 1940s, there would be a record of someone died in the tower. Don't really know. Maybe he fell. Maybe he slipped. Maybe he had a heart attack. He could have died in there. He doesn't have to die in there to haunt the place.
Right.
And you actually can't really rule out that it is just a ghost from something else. It doesn't necessarily have to be a World War II soldier. Or maybe that was his last memory. He ended up getting deployed and died overseas in the war. Who knows?
Right. And
Yeah.
it's on the shore where all these shipwrecks have happened. So who's to say it's not somebody from one of the shipwrecks and they just were already there in that area? So the options are almost limitless for who could actually be haunting this place. We'll never know, probably.
Could be Al Capone.
Oh my God. You had to find a way.
You
to get
said
him in.
options were limitless. I'm going with it. It's the strongest theory going yet.
Al Capone known to growl at men. So
Can we
probably-
limit it to the ghost of a soldier? I mean, do we know that much, or is it just
they're according to the people that have seen the pictures, which we are going off of pure hearsay for this. It's a photo of a soldier, and that's all they say. They don't specify the uniform or anything like that. I dug for this, trying to find a picture, more detail on whatever it was. It was nothing more than that. All I could find was where he haunted and sort of how he haunted, which is Tower 12, the campground, and the Great Dune, they call it. There's like a big dune that they built for the military base. So they find him like almost patrolling that area and making sure that people sort of stay away from stuff around there. So
Right. Joey brings up a good point. Says, if you fall out of the tower and die, did you die in the tower? The answer would be no, obviously. Well, unless you like fell down the staircase inside the tower. But if you fall outside of the tower, and here's a fun theory. Well, not that fun. Actually, it's really not fun at all. Fall off the tower and die. Let's say this is how ghosts work. You know, we're experts here on how ghosts work. Let's say your ghost wakes up and you're like, oh my gosh, I just fell out of the tower. First thing you do is go back in the tower, right? You think you're still alive. You're like, oh, back to work. Won't make that mistake again, you know? So yes, I believe that if he did fall from the tower and die just outside the tower, the first thing his ghost would do would be walk right back into that tower and then start haunting the hell out of it and growling at people.
if you fall out of the tower and die, do you die in the tower? I think that the answer to that is just no, right? Unless if you're in the tower and have a heart attack and then fall out.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good point.
Mm.
We don't have to keep dwelling on this. Moving on.
So it's a cool story, but it's one of the least factual, like abundance of facts stories other than the haunting, which we come across, right? You never know why something manifests in a place. And to the point Jesse made, he didn't have to die there to haunt the place. This could have been a place that he was one of his most, like, in terms of memories, where he just felt so at home, or just the memories were so like emblazed in his brain that you go back to those places sometimes. You know, we talk about it with celebrity ghosts. We talk about it with a bunch of different ghost stories, that you don't always have to die at a place or whatever to haunt the place. Your energy just has to kind of be enveloped by that place, and then you start haunting it.
That's one theory. It could be anything. I would actually put more stock in it's a ghost that haunts that beach and has been there for a long time, but we don't know. We're just speculating here, just spitting in the dark.
Yeah, but I mean, it would always come back to me being like, why does he patrol that very specific area? Well, there's so many towers, right? It's
Yeah.
Tower 12. We won't go through the whole list again, but it's like that triangle that he's just patrolling and making sure that that's kind of safe. So
There's got to be multiple people that have heard this ghostly growl. And is that the only ghost sighting or ghostly encounter that's happened there?
well, the pictures, of course, where he shows up in the pictures. There's been voices from what I was reading. People have gotten EVPs there as well, but nobody's gotten a name or anything from what I've found. So
Very cool.
that's everything pretty much in Cape Henlopen, which is part of Lewes. You guys want to talk about the Cannonball House real quick?
I do.
Okay, before we talk about the Cannonball House, I want to show this cannonball one more time. I showed it in the episode, but I would like to show you guys the cannonball one more time before we start talking about it. This is the cannonball that hit this house.
I'm gonna be so mad if I see this for sale on eBay.
I just want to say that if I was a citizen of Lewes,
Mhm.
I would have just stood there and I would have just caught these little goddamn cannonballs. What were you shooting these things out of? Look how small this cannonball is. Like I was just like, thanks for throwing this little
Sure,
thing.
but
I'm gonna say it. I'm just gonna come out and say this. If I was a resident of Lewes, I would be insulted that I'm expected to believe that is the situation that happened right there. That it just hit the wall, didn't cause any damage except for being perfectly placed in the bricks.
I mean, maybe they repaired some of the brick around it or something. We do have a little bit of whatever that stuff's called right above it. Maybe
okay. Well, I will say that if it lodged itself into the foundation, it would have no problem ripping through dumbass Rob as he tries to catch it.
It's not going to rip through me. You see this thing? This is like a candle bin bowling ball.
Okay.
Fired out of a cannon, Rob.
Yeah. It's still like 100 times the size of a 9mm bullet, but I don't know. It is what it is. Yes, it does look goofy though. I don't know why that looks silly. I think it's just because the bricks are all perfect around it. Again, they probably repaired. It actually does. Okay, if you look closely at it, it looks like there is a rectangle around where they had repaired those bricks. They're all a different color, a little darker maroon.
Yeah.
For audio listeners, we are looking at, for some reason, a goofy image. We don't know why it's goofy, but it looks goofy.
It's because it's because our brains go to the fact that cannonballs are like the size of,
Bowling ball.
basketballs, right?
Yeah.
For the most part. And this thing is literally like,
Basketball's a stretch.
Baseball. This is like a baseball.
yeah,
This
this
is
is like a baseball, softball.
Yeah.
I
Anyways,
mean, you've been to Gettysburg. You look at the cannons and the size of the hole in those cannons. They're about the size of a baseball. Some of them. So it's like, I guess it makes sense that the cannonball would correlate with the size of the cannon.
Yeah, I just would catch it. I'd just swat that thing out of there.
we'll have to do a live test on whether or not Rob can catch a cannonball. And I can guarantee you that the small ones probably move a lot faster than the big ones. I don't know. Haven't really tested that out, but moving
See
on.
these hands? I'm gonna catch that cannonball.
That's the Cannonball house. Cannonball still lodged in the side of it.
But the haunting doesn't really, like, the famous story doesn't come from that war of 1812. It actually comes from somebody that lived in the house in the early 1900s, and she was just doing her daily chores and her stove just basically exploded and burned her to death. And everyone believes that's who's haunting the house now. The house isn't a house anymore. It's a museum that you can actually go to and check out the house. And I have seen that people have done investigations in there. I don't know how much they actually let people do that, or if they still let them do that, but there have been investigations in this house. I wasn't able to follow up and see what evidence these teams got there, but it is a place that you can go to and at least walk around and check out. And apparently, if you were that river captain, see something on the second floor, because he came running down, according to staff, and ran out and said there's something up there, and just like took off and never came back. So, and there's other ghost stories. The one I didn't understand is the chest, right? The chest with the key, like the thought process. They said that the key went missing for the chest, And the staff thought that the key fell inside of the chest. Is that something that happened with those keys? And I guess maybe, I don't know.
Maybe if the lock was broken and you stick the key in, it could go all the way through and fall in.
I guess. So that's what they thought happened, and it was locked in there, but it ended up not being. They found it underneath a big pile of rope that they had also never seen in the house. Like this just big pile of rope just appeared. They picked it up and they go, "Oh, there's the key." So
It's very strange.
yeah. So that's a bit of an interesting story. But I would catch that cannonball is what I want to go back to.
Elizabeth said she wants a used cannonball, and Elizabeth, you can have the cannonball that we use to test on Rob. And then
The house is, I
house.
think we've solved it. The house is probably haunted by whoever tried to catch that cannonball.
Yeah.
I'll hand it over to you after I catch it. You can have that one.
For sure.
His hand comes with it, actually.
What I forgot to touch on with the ships is they do have the museum in town where they're holding all the artifacts from the Dubrock, and that museum has had mysterious hauntings around just the artifacts. So like the hull, some of the personal items, people have been touched, they've seen stuff, they've experienced crazy like cold spots, people just reporting them to the staff, not even thinking of it in terms of hauntings. And it's been numerous times. So that would be an interesting place to go investigate around the artifacts of the Dubrock and see if we got anything.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. Sounds like a cool museum too.
Yes. And Dave, I think you looked up something else for me for this episode, correct?
Yes, there's a pretty interesting legend, and it's a legend that's actually based on something that actually happened. So those are my favorite legends. And this is the Cape May Lewes Ferry. So it's located in Delaware, obviously, which, fun fact, is the nation's first state. And below the sand at this beach, somewhere between 600 and 800 bodies are believed to be buried of unknown people.
Oh.
Now, the tales that surround this vary. So they believe that they are bodies that have washed up on the shore of just unknown sailors from all of the countless shipwrecks that happened back in the 1800s. And they believe it's either early Dutch settlers or it could be murdered Native Americans, crew members of ghost ships, many other theories behind that. But this is not exactly a beach you'd want to bring your kids to, because bones will sometimes float up and kind of become unburied from the sand. So this is still a problem to this day. They'll find bones.
Oh,
my kids would be pumped.
I know.
Kidding me?
That's true. Mine too. So the ferry was built back in the 1960s, but a sign honoring the dead that are buried below wasn't put up until the 1980s. Now, this beach is very haunted, and they say once that sign was put up in the 1980s, a lot of the hauntings stopped. But before they stopped, there were a lot of very crazy hauntings surrounding this beach and the buildings that are around it. So Rick Lane, he worked at the ferry for over a decade, and he says keeping an overnight staff was nearly impossible. He had one lady, really nice lady, he says, quote, she had only been there for 3 or 4 nights, and she came running in, threw the keys at me, and told me, "There's ghosts in here. Nobody told me there'd be ghosts."
Oh.
I'm not staying. I
gotta
quit.
go.
Wow, she was gone. Rick's wife and kids even had an experience there. They claimed that a man poked his head into Rick's office, said nothing, and then left. There was nobody else in the building. Later, when they were in the lobby, Rick's wife pointed to a picture that was hanging up, and she said, "That's the guy. Why is his picture here?" And Rick had to tell her that it was to memorialize him because he died 7 years ago.
Oh, I got goosebumps from that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Just the optics of somebody just peeking their head in, not saying anything, and then leaving, and you find that it's a dead person. Very creepy.
That's so funny, because I wonder if he's like, oh, whoops, I thought I was alone. I
Yeah.
don't know. One I was going through his ghost head right there, you know?
Who knows? Nobody knows what goes through ghost heads. There's a man in a cape with long white hair who's been seen in the morning in a gift shop area. The person who was working there quoted, he walked into the women's restroom, and then when she went in to go investigate, there was nobody there. There's always the strong odor of cigar smoke that's been detected in the women's restroom. Loud crying has been heard in the kitchen and storage area, and several employees said that they've heard the restroom doors banging and hand dryers coming on with nobody in the building. One of the strangest stories involves a sighting of Sunny, who is a deceased police officer. Woman reported to her husband that she saw an officer walk out of the door that she didn't recognize. She described Sunny to a T, including his clip-on tie that he always wore clipped to one side of his shirt. I'm reading these two stories, which I pulled from two different sites now, and I'm just putting this together now as I'm reading it. The story with Sunny sounds an awful lot like Rick Lane's wife, who experienced the guy poke his head in. I wonder if that's the same story, just from different people telling it.
It sounds that could definitely be that.
And then on one occasion recently, several books were found knocked off the storage shelves in the storage room, and all the books that were on the floor were of ghost stories.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's the haunting surrounding the Cape May Lewes ferry.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't have been enough for a second episode, so I'm glad that you did look up that, because I mean, it's terrifying stuff.
Yeah.
Every book getting knocked over being a book about ghosts is nuts.
It's eerie. It really is.
My library would be a mess. I remember I started, I'm like, I almost have one shelf but now it's a whole wall of just ghost books. Yeah. The library is growing.
Gotta have the ghost books.
Legitimate horror compendium you have.
It is. It's important.
Yes.
I would catch that cannonball. I know I could catch it. I'm just gonna say it one more time because I just keep thinking about it. I think I could catch it.
I mean, I would love to see you try.
I'm gonna have to.
We'll get you a catcher's mitt and the catcher's face mask so that you can still fucking die anyways.
We haven't done a Patreon pre-show hangout in a long time. I think we'll probably have to do it post-show so we can at least have you on one last episode.
Yeah,
and make a little Patreon exclusive content there. So very cool. Anything else from this area?
No, that's gonna do. Oh, do you want to make everybody mad real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. I was gonna put it in the actual episode. So Lewes is technically the first town in Delaware. So they refer to themselves as the first town of the first state. So Lewes is the first town of the first state. Now listen to that again, people. I'm not even going to say anymore, but I'm ready for you to come into the comments and just start being very angry that I said that this is the first town.
Yeah, I do feel like this is not the first state that claims they're the first state. I feel like we've covered 6 of those, and then
Delaware is literally called the first state.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I believe it. I just feel like a lot of states claim that for some reason, and just like there's like multiple airports that are like first in flight. I'm like, wait a second, the other airport said that. Like, I've seen that so much. Boom, Tess come up with another $50 donation. She bet $50 on the Cannonball. I do wish we had a feature to create polls here. I wonder if the mods could do that on YouTube. Of would Rob survive catching the Cannonball with his teeth?
The answer is yes.
Would Rob might survive. Flesh Rob would not survive.
Brick Rob apparently would definitely survive.
Definitely.
Dude, if a brick wall can take it, I can handle that cannonball.
Yeah, I liken you also to a brick wall.
Yeah.
Be the first.
Some have called me Rob Brickwall Coakley in the past.
All right. So regarding the first town in the first state, St. Augustine's being brought up. St. Augustine is the oldest city, and it dates back way before the United States was established in 1776. So 1787 was when Delaware became the first official state after the war was won and after the Constitution and everything. Then we broke into states. Delaware was the first one.
Sure.
So.
But the first town of the first state is what it is.
Got it. Yep. We do have an update from FanDuel. Joey provides us with the odds. FanDuel has already set you at plus 1,500.
So that's way better than it should be.
You should hammer that line. I'll make you so much money.
Yes, indeed. So that will pretty much do it. Let me pull up the Patreon names. Once again, this episode dedicated to Papa Squatch. I do encourage that you stick around because we have the most ridiculous thing that has ever been created to play after the show.
Well,
my favorite.
My favorite thing. Spent my entire day doing that. Any reviews while I pull up the Patreon list?
Yeah, we got a review here from Welder King 88 titled Awesome Ghost Stories. You guys have told some of the best ghost stories I've listened to. Love all the different voiceovers. Keep them coming. And once again, thanks to Tom for doing that opening ghost story voiceover.
Got an updated review. I always love when people leave us a review and then come back later and update their review, because it just shows that they are our most loyal of listeners. And this one is from Average Joe 2012. He actually spelled average wrong, but that's okay. He says, I'm having my mom type this for me because I'm completely illiterate. Found the pod 2 months ago, sounding great in the beginning and then slowly got better and better. Update. I just finished listening to all the episodes and the sound quality is far superior to the quality of my education, since I'm illiterate to the point that simply looking at letters and numbers will send me into a full-blown panic attack. Keep up the great work. Sincerely, your biggest fan, Average Joe 2012. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you so much, Average Joe. Average Joe.
It's beautifully worded. Again, thanks for the update. That's beautiful. Speaking of beautiful people, let's thank our VIPs, starting with Tess, who just dropped $50. Thank you so much. So generous. You're amazing. We also have Dave D, Kate and Steve M, Blazora, Glitter Tees coming from Washington, Kelly C, Nick, Donnie N, Inspires Gaming, who right now is hosting our stream on his Twitch channel because
very cool.
He does it all the time. And I can't thank him enough. Great person. Allison V, also a great person. Robert H, also a great person. I'm not going to do this for everyone, I promise. We have Dave Spanish is better than his geography. J9, Mom and Pops W, Lisa J, and Dude, where's my taco-filled car? Thank you so much for being VIPs. Next up, let's go thank our Warren's Wards. And that's going to start with Beth C, Serena, Shawners, Apple Steph, Leslie F, Rachel G, Her Lady Spookship, Nefarious Chadpoles, Wahini Pirate, I Am the Bridge Witch and I Hate Rob, Julie Gooley, Eugene M, Arcade Hunters, Kath Q, Liz Young, DC, Chris Connolly, LBPS founder, next HTGS guest, the other Rachel B, Sarah Cook, Zeta Chimera, we have Janice G,
I believe
Lily.
that is a chimera.
Yeah, I was about to stop and say I made his logo and I still don't know how to read it. Anyways. Zeta Chimera. Thank you. We will now say that correctly. We have Janice G, Lily, Rachel B, Seven Bones Rob at the bottom of the well. La niña que atormenta tus pesadillas. Thank you, Sydney. You're putting me through this every week. Papa Squatch. My lighthouse wasn't haunted today. Stephe. Westchester Moodus. I still have the ham hands. So that's who that is. And we have Loving It as well. Next up, we have the Ghost Pirate Mafia. No pirates in today's episode. Made me sad. Sherry Perry, Shay, Trevor S, Del G, Thick Boy F, allegedly lumbering around the Al Capone's boarding school for harshly yeeted orphans and half skeeted Spank Bacon. Sorry, I had to say that twice. Christina S, Kate C, Chrissy, Kelly C, Isla D, Arg, Crazy Legs, who also threw in some donations. Thanks again, Crazy Legs. We have American Wear Potato in Texas, The Redbeard, hashtag The Revenge of Cake Dave. I am Senior Master Weather Observer David Wilkins. Just call me Bree, Miss Macabre. We have a meetup in Ohio, and we will bring good pizza.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to do a meetup in Ohio. I think actually the next convention that we do, I believe, is going to be in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken.
Next year.
We will drop more info on that when it approaches and when we actually confirm whether or not we're going to do it. Michelle, Naroku, Cold Warrior, Great Person, Rob, growling at a tower full of Ohio pizza. I have come to create witty Patreon names and subscribe to creators, and I'm all out of witty Patreon names. D from H-Town, Meta A, Sarah B, Dominica, Oryx, the Taken King. Monster Mom 04, Allie, Dark Snark. No, Dave, I did not call Jesse a coward. I said McTibbles wouldn't be scared to read Patreon names. Stick to Spanish. Par favor. Oh, por favor. Well, no. The way it was spelled was Parfoyver. So that's not how you spell por favor. That one made me say worse Spanish than the actual one in Spanish. That's upsetting for me and my family.
I did. So I recognized the word coward that was in there, the drip. So it was in both. That's why I assumed he was just calling you a coward.
Okay. Megan S, Morgan S. Honestly, I thought you were just saying that to call me a coward.
No.
Sharon V, Wayne C, Captain McTibbles of the Guadalajara Pirate Clan. Crystal Quinn, we still have good old Colby. You're damn right we do. We're happy.
Damn
about
straight.
that. Daddy Rob is the greatest. Thick boy Freddie eats Jesse's farts. Alicia E. Thick boy Freddie allegedly attempting to yeet thick wife into a poorly dug grave while she is taking a nap. Take that, woman. Swanee, world traveling nuclear weather observer Jesse's useless boat dock. Sam from Nepal. Joe R. Paul from St. Louis. Al Capone. I missed when the shows were all about me. Spoiler, it was today for some reason. Huggy Bear. And next up we have Inevita Dave. We like that. Solar Flare, Mariah M, Kiralee J, Anthony, hey, where the hell did Celebrity Hauntings go? T, that's a good question. Got to do another one of those. Cody G, Brandon W, Hooply Whooply, Bridge Witch, and the Polkageist. Thank you so much for being on Patreon. $3 a month will get you there. $1 a month will get you on YouTube. And if you got a gifted sub, because there were so many of them today, then make sure you thank whoever gifted those to you. Once again, thanks to Potato, Papa Squatch, Crazy Legs, Tess, Aussie, everyone who gifted and joined on YouTube today. That's what keeps the show going, is Patreon and donations and all of your love and support. So thank you so much.
And if you look through the comments of the Celebrity Hauntings episodes, you would also be scared to do another Celebrity Hauntings episode.
Oh, that's so true. That's also what keeps our YouTube channel going, is nonstop hate on every celebrity haunting that we've ever done. But anyways, that'll pretty much do it. We'll be back on Friday for something that I haven't edited, and Rob's mad at me about that. I don't remember what it is.
There'll be a Strange Graves episode on Friday hitting the streams. That should be on Patreon tonight, hopefully.
Hell yeah. Stick around for a special tribute to the one and only, the legend, the man, the myth, it's Papa Squatch. Stick around. We'll see you soon.
Peace.